Is RAG gone? Well, obviously by RAG I mean retrieval augmented generation. And is it over? Well, whilst everyone was talking about DeepSeek, Google just released Gemini 2.0. Now, it's released for everyone, it's free to use, and the API is super cheap. It has decent quality, the speed is rapid, and as you can see, it's the cheapest major model on the market. So, what's this got to do with RAG? Well, it also has a massive context window. What does that mean? Well, let's get into it. So, the first thing we have to understand are tokens. So, when you are interacting with an LLM, they don't count chars, they count tokens. So in your LLM, when you give it an input, you can only give it an input of a certain length, and that length is counted in tokens. Now, if we look at this here, each letter is a character. However, each token is not a word, because like for instance here, it looks like a word. Whereas here, it's actually half of a word. So a token is just a portion of text. So you have a context window. This context window is made up of tokens. Now, the tokens, if we look here, I thought this here was a good graphic to explain tokens a little better, which is for GPT 3.5 Turbo, which was like the big one. But I was going to say back in the day, but like, I don't know, 2 years ago, you could fit in 0.16 of a Harry Potter book into the context window. So if you wanted to ask it a question about Harry Potter, you would have to have like, what would that be? I don't know, 7 different windows open with portions, and then ask them, and they would only know about one little bit of the book. So the way you would get around that is by using retrieval augmented generation, which we'll talk about in a minute, which essentially would be that before GPT Turbo would get some information, you would pre-search to find what's the relevant information and then only give it that, because you probably wouldn't have to pass it the whole book, but you might. Well, as you can see, as time's gone on, these context windows have got larger and larger to the point where Gemini 1.5 Turbo can have 9.77 Harry Potter books worth, which is like almost the entire series. So just in a couple of years, we've gone from here, where you would have to go and search what do I need, to here, where you're like, here's all the books, just figure out what it means. So, examples of how long context windows normally are. Well, DeepSeek R1, 128,000 tokens, and O3 is about 200,000. Now, if we compare that across all of the major models today, you can see that Gemini 2.0 Pro, 2 million tokens. 2 million versus like GPT 3.5, 4,000. And then the kind of normal ones here like DeepSeek, GPT, they're 128, maybe 200. And as you can see, Google's just blown out of the water with 1 million to 2 million. So we know about context windows. RAG, how does RAG actually work? Because we do need to understand this if we're going to say that we don't need it anymore. Well, basically, you have your raw data source, your Harry Potter book. You extract that information, so you get it, download it onto your computer, whatever you're going to do. You chunk it up into little bits, and then you embed these bits. Now, this embedding essentially turns words, so like A, B, C, into numbers like 1, 2, 3. So basically, it turns it into a list of numbers. Now, the reason it does that is because when you then want to search for what you're looking for, you can then search it in a vector database, which is the database of all these numbers, and these numbers are closely linked together. So when you say have a query, that query gets embedded, so that gets turned into numbers, and that gets run against a vector database. Now, how do we get these numbers? Basically, a large language model does this embedding, which turns it into numbers. So the large language model has figured this all out. And basically, within your vector database, you have things which are similar in nature, close to one another. So A, B, C would be 1, 2, 3, and then say B, I don't know, B, C, D would be like 1, 2, 4, or something like that, right? So it's closely linked together. A better example would be like cat and dog would be closely linked together. So before you get your response from your LLM, like you have a pre-search essentially of this portion here, which is the RAG, and then you get the retrieval augmented generation because you augment whatever you're going to generate based on what you can retrieve from this vector database. Now, this works really well in one specific case, which is facts, because if you think about it, this portion here, where we're chunking, we're breaking up into little bits, and then we're comparing those little bits that we're going to pull into the vector database. So for example, in Harry Potter, you wouldn't be passing in an entire chapter into your RAG, or possibly not. You'd be taking like one little snippet, so like one paragraph. Now, that works well, as I was saying, for facts, because say you have here, which is say the Harry Potter book, and then this is just one page, and then you'd have like the page divided up into quarters. So then when you go looking for one chunk, you can go and get this one piece. But then that doesn't really work well if you're reasoning, because to reason you may have to understand this entire page or the entire chapter, for example, right? And that's why context windows are so important, because really RAG is just a way to try and get around the fact that context windows are so small. And so you understand that you are losing a bit of context there by having shorter context windows. But it's kind of like try to get a leg up. Quick interjection, if you are an AI enthusiast or entrepreneur, I'm creating a school community, a place for us to help one another and talk to one another. There'll be a community piece, which will be kind of like Discord. There'll be a place for classroom courses, essentially teaching you the latest in AI as I learn it. And there'll be calendar for weekly meetups. Now, if this is of interest to you, first link in the description below is where you can go and join the waitlist. For reference, this isn't my school community, this is someone else's, but just so you get a gist of what it's going to look like. It'll be free for the first 20, so sign up as fast as you can. See you in a bit. This doesn't go without cons though, because there are pros and cons of large context windows. On the pro side, you get longer, more coherent conversations because you have more data to reason over. There are fewer hallucinations and the ability to analyze large amounts of data, like the entire book. However, the cons are the increased cost. Generally, the more tokens, the more processing power required, the more it's going to cost. And also, there's more opportunities to confuse the AI, because if you pass in just a couple of bits of information from Harry Potter, it can then just use those pieces of information. Whereas if you pass in the entire book, it's kind of like, I don't know. And additionally, it doesn't automatically mean better outputs, but it does mean you can pass more information in. So, how does this work on, say, time? Because, for example, here I'm thinking, when I'm getting to this point in my thought process, I'm like, well, how would this work across time, money, and hallucinations? Because they're the big three components. How long is it going to take to generate? How expensive is it? And how accurate is it, essentially? So, if you first look at time, well, the RAG has more steps in it. And so, generally speaking, that will take more time. As for expense, the context window is how much is going to be required to be processed. And generally, the larger the window, the more expensive it is. And as for hallucinations, it's actually a kind of similar thing, where the larger the window, generally, the more hallucinations are made. For reference, this here, the hallucination rates, the 0.7, that means that, as we can see here, that's the hallucination rate, so how much is kind of made up. The factual consistency is 99.3, so 100 minus whatever this number is. Now, if you want to keep an eye on this as more models kind of come out, you can go over to Vectara Hallucination Leaderboard. Just have a Google, go to that GitHub, and it'll be there. Now, in regards to this hallucination, my theory as to why this happens, just based on what I know, is because reasoning requires more tokens. So although the bigger the window, the higher possibility you have of confusing the LLM, it will reduce the hallucinations because it doesn't have to fill in the gaps between facts. Because if it knows here and here, it kind of has to fill in this piece here of the story if it's a kind of narrative type of thing. Whereas when you can pass in the entire page, it doesn't have to fill that in, so it can be more accurate. That's my theory. So what does this really mean for RAG? Well, is RAG going away? Maybe. It kind of depends. But I see that the best possible solution, in my opinion, from what I can see thus far, is that we have some sort of intelligent search paired with a large context window. For example, intelligent search, basically that is what RAG is. RAG is essentially some intelligent search, right? With a small context window. So I think now the idea will probably be something like, instead of this chunking here being like this size, basically the idea now is just that our chunks are going to get bigger, because then we can pass in, say, entire pages, entire books, etc. So we can give it a lot more context. And so that should increase the accuracy. Now, the whole point of this was to talk about Gemini, so I think we should have a quick look at Gemini before we go and see if it is actually any good. And the best place to go for this is aistudio.google.com. You can just go straight to gemini.google.com, but the Google AI Studio is much better. There's a lot of features we can actually talk about. So first you can create prompts here. So just kind of the standard chatbot piece where you can have it as a research body, sentiment check, city scavenger. I actually don't know what that is. That's what it says. Oh, well there you go. It's telling me an actual scavenger hunt to go on. Well, anyway, and from here, basically just your normal chatbot. And I've always been really impressed with how fast it is. On the right hand side here, you can see token count. So how many tokens are used for the content generation out of 1 million. The temperature, you're wanting that probably pretty low down. And then the tools, do you want a structured output? Like, do you want JSON or something? Code execution? Do you want to call some functions? Do you want to ground it with Google search, etc.? So a lot of features embedded in here. And additionally, and something that I find really cool right now, is you can talk with Gemini live. And this doesn't just mean actually talking to it, because you can, the same way you could talk to ChatGPT, but you can actually share your screen. So like right now, I could allow this and share my screen such that then Gemini could explain what's on the screen. Now, how is that cool? Well, because, and watch out, this is going to be our next video. Here, I created a video where you can build your own ChatGPT operator. So ChatGPT operator, or OpenAI operator, was released however long ago, 2 weeks ago, say. And essentially what it does is it allows you to have an AI make decisions and then view browsers, make decisions, view browser, and essentially do something in the browser, like, you know, go and find stuff for your shopping list and then buy it and then schedule it for a specific day, or make a reservation for a hotel with you just saying, you know, book me a 4-star hotel that's like 80 to 100 quid in this city, and then it'll go away and do it. Now, the cool thing here with Gemini is that if we plug Gemini in to this open source ChatGPT operator, so a free version of it, because of how proficient Gemini is at viewing screens, because it has a feature to do that, you will then be able to plug it into this open source browser, and you could tell it to go and talk to Gemini here, and you could watch the AI talk to itself, or talk to another thread of itself, which I think would be an interesting video to see what it comes up with. But anyway, so there you go. Long and short of it, Gemini is well cool. I'm going to have a look and see what we can do. And as for RAG, traditional RAG is probably gone-ish, but I'm interested to see how we can expand it up and essentially use the similar type of RAG pattern, and maybe just remove the vector DB part and just have a more intelligent searching system. So anyway, hope you enjoyed. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me know if you want to see anything else specifically. And make sure, I'm actually coming out with a school community to teach you all about AI. It'll be the first link in the description to join the waitlist. Please do so, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.